learned and experienced is that, you know, if you don't open up and you don't delegate, then you'll kill yourself. And if there's one thing that I've managed to understand, is the art of delegation, because if I can pass on, you know, to Claire Smith, to Arian, my palette, my understanding, my knowledge, then grab it, run it, and then pass it on to your team. Don't hold that inside. If there's one thing that I've learned over the last 10 years, stay in front of the competition, because there's
the essential knife skills you need in the kitchen. We will slice, we will dice, we'll chiffonade, we'll julienne, we might even cube some stuff. I'll be going over the knife skills you need to make restaurant quality dishes at home. This is Knife Skills 101.
Or it moves you. And I've seen so many sad stories across the decade where chefs have just got lazy, given up, and lost that hunger to be competitive, because it's the best job in the world. That's not really a job, it's a passion. Because when you're rubbing shoulders, and here we are now, 10 years later, and I've got a restaurant next door to...
It's the most used tool in a professional kitchen, and you need to know how to use it. Let's start with showing you how in, thumb tucked under. The knife should always be resting on your longest knuckle. Whenever I stand in front of a cutting board, I'm making sure that my shoulders are square to the cutting board. I bend my knees slightly because you don't want to stand with a stiff back. I see a lot of people doing this, the hunch. Don't do the hunch. Good posture is really important when you're chopping and cutting. And a lot of people will go on an angle. This is how I cut, but I always tell people when they start out, try and turn just slightly so that the back of your spine is lined up with the cutting board, so we have a 90-degree angle. This allows you to start making accurate cuts, right? Everything's square. One thing I want ever give up.
That's in yourself. Cooking is an amazing journey, and don't think you can learn it within 3 or 4 years. It's like studying medicine. It's over a 10 to 15 year period. I'm 42 years of age and I'm still learning new exciting things now that I bring back to the fold.
The shorter the cut, the shorter the cook. So if I'm gonna use this for a sauce that cooks for about an hour, I'll cut it small. If I'm gonna use this for a sauce that cooks for 3 or 4 hours, I cut a little bit larger. You'll notice that I go from the high cut to the low cut here, and then I turn and I go to the low cut. One thing you want to make sure is you're not feeding the material into the knife, you're actually moving the knife down the vegetable. This cut is the dice, and what we want to
Travel, get paid, and experience phenomenal food anywhere in the world. Brilliant.
Cooking is a life skill. For me, it's fundamentally important. It's just as crucial as keeping fit, because Latin, history, geography, no disrespect, but if you're not going to teach that for the rest of your life, it doesn't come into play. Cooking does. 3 times a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life, you need to eat. So we don't...
Something you might put on a hamburger or on a sandwich. Tomatoes are round, but they're easily gripped. And what I like to do with a slice is hold it nice and tight. When you cut, I'm almost doing a little bit of a slicing motion or a sawing motion. So I get a really nice slice of red onion as well. Now, if you want this to be a ring or flat and round like the tomato, you cut off both ends and you can peel the skin off. What I'm gonna do is something more for like a salad. I cut it in half. Again, that high cut, I take the skin off. If I cut it with the lines of the onion, it's a julienne. But if I cut it across the lines of the onion, that's my slice. Down and through. So it's more like a sawing motion than a chopping motion.
French cuisine, mannerism, and cooking in a very robust, tenacious way. So, yeah, vision and open-mindedness. And we never cut corners. The minute you start cutting corners in food, time out. There's no worse job to have than to cut corners in food. So, attention to detail, an amazing, exciting journey. One of the very few jobs anywhere in the world that you can travel, get paid, and experience phenomenal food anywhere in the world. Brilliant.
Cooking is a life skill.
And again, if my knife isn't long enough, I'll cut one side, give it a turn, and cut the other side. Then, once we have this, we can always turn it onto its flat side, and again, cut it so it's nice and even. Now you have a wedge, and cut your slices. This next cut is called a baton. This shape is mainly used for garnish on a plate. You might cut an apple for a salad in batons. It's a matchstick. So, and again, continue to square things off so that I start off with a nice rectangular slab. Down and through at a 90-degree angle, down and through at a 90-degree angle. And now once we have our slabs, we can cut into our batons. I start at the tip and go through and down. So that is our baton. The next cut we're gonna do is a julienne, which is a fine matchstick. Normally, cut it into a piece that's easily manageable. I'm gonna press down on my knife lightly and kind of saw away any excess pepper. So I have a nice thin slab. My hand's a little bit in the way of the knife, but I'm not going so fast that I'm gonna slip and hurt myself. Again, I'm holding my pepper with the claw, and I'm just going down and through, right? So I'm not rocking, I'm pushing this through so I have nice, fine matchsticks. If you just kind of push down, you're kind of crunching into it and crushing the pepper. Nice even cut. So this is the bias cut. The bias cut is basically a long, shallow angle. With small things like green onions, it's usually a garnish, and we want it to look really good. And then I'm gonna cut the stem end off. I'm using that same high cut that we use for precision cuts and push down and through. You can adjust the thickness by moving your claw hand in or out, but you'll notice the knife is resting on my knuckle. A good bias cut, 20 to 40 degrees. You can make them longer and flatter if you want. You can make them a little more shallow. I usually go with about 45 degrees. Make sure you have your protractor out when you do this. Chopping, we're basically rocking the knife. Here, we're sliding it through. Again, if we chop this and go straight down, we get a little more of a crushing sound. We're not getting a really nice, smooth edge. This next cut is a mince, and a mince is basically a rough chop on a very small scale. But you'll see a lot of chefs do this. You put your blade on top of the knife. I always face my blade away just for safety. Give it a little tap, and then the skin comes off fairly easily. Go in with that low cut, or the rocking cut. Mince one way, and then I go the opposite way. The pivot point of my knife is usually the tip of the knife. I'm lifting the back and chopping down with the back of the knife. If it gets caught on the blade, wipe it off the blade, and then chop. That is chiffonade, and chiffonade is mainly used for garnishes. And what that is a very thin shred or a very thin thread of herbs. The way that I do chiffonade is then we do a little bit of a roll into a nice bundle. This not only makes the process go quicker, you're getting even slices all the way through. And here, what's important is that we slice through and don't bruise the herb. So having a sharp knife is important. You're gonna do that same high cut straight through. If you just chop down on this, you're gonna get bruised and it's gonna turn black. And there is our chiffonade.
I don't feel I've given everything I've got in food.
Even before I started work.
That is called the Kendall Jenner, and here's why you should never cut like that. She starts out by taking the cucumber and putting her hand over the cucumber and trying to cut like this. Basically what she's done is make herself blind to what she's cutting, and that is super dangerous. Whenever you're cutting, you should be able to see where the knife is and what you're cutting at all times. Swing it out, use your claw, now you can cut safely.